The antithesis of the bad girl is a man who self-destructs. And so when I think of Susie, I think of that wonderful rebellion that can happen. That spirit of just saying, no, that's not how it is. This is how it will be. This is what I see in the world. And it's too easy for us, I think, to be hesitant to chart that course, to be the trailblazer, to be able to say, this is what I see as true. It is different than what everyone else has said. And it is the thing that pushes knowledge forward. It's the thing that pushes the boundary of how we move forward. And it is my deep and great pleasure to introduce Susie.
Oh my God, do I have to give the talk? That was really sweet and great, and I hope that I can live up to it, like a little, a little. Listen, my upstate New York pals that are walking in just right now, find yourself a chair over here. Oh, and my Wisconsin pals too. Listen, I'm calling you out, but only for this reason. Come cuddle on this side with us and find a chair to do it. Okay. I am so grateful to be here with all of you today and have a lot to say somehow. And then we took a lot of time to get there. So I'm going to try to say as much of it as I can. And I know that I talk really quickly sometimes. So if I'm talking too fast, will you please go like this? I'm serious, I mean it. We're making a bond together. This thing that we're building is the thing we're building together, and it will be helpful not just to you, but to everyone if you go like this. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, yes. And I've given a version of this talk before, but as I got into thinking about what might be the thing that I wanted to say now, I realized that the things that I have to say now are really different from the last time, and the context is really different. And so now this is kind of like an amalgamation, and we'll see. And there's some things, in general, I'm really shy about some of the things that I say because there's always blasphemy, and I worry about lightning bolts, and today is no different. But I wanted to take, in the beginning of this talk, which is listening from the edges, every periphery is the center, I wanted to take a moment to give some props to where these kind of orientations, really I'm talking to you about what my orientations are as I go through my work, and I'm hoping that these orientations might be useful to you as you go through your work also. So one of the things that informs what I do is this piece by Related Tactics, which is a collective of Weston Taruya, Michelle Carlson, and Nate Watson. And Nate Watson, especially for us as glass people, has given so much. And here you're trying to read the thing, so I'll tell you what the thing is. I think I will. I'm used to being able to also read it and being close. But it's in our world, we are whole. And what they're thinking of is that it is in the context of this show, Double Consciousness, which was at the Museum of Glass Tacoma, and it was artists of color, black artists in particular. And it's only in the face of whiteness that we seem like we're on the edge. And that idea, where you're looking from, who's on the edge and who's in the center, and how we can think about how we can reorient that is so much of what I tried to do. You can also move chair if you want to, Okay, and the other, I gotta give props to 3 people, Paul Stankard, Mark Peiser, and Audrey Handler, for shaping so much of what I do and giving me the road from which to walk. So Paul Stankard, the legendary flame worker, who knows how much we're going to get done today. The legendary flame worker, who is almost as legendary for going out into the world and telling everybody, you can do this. You can make a difference. What you have to say is valuable. Keep doing that. And I hope, if there's anything that you take away from this today, what I hope is just a little bit of that. Let me do a little bit of that for you, hopefully. And then you guys do it for each other. And Mark Peiser, who never looked at the world as it was and said, okay, well that must be, but looked at the world as a spot to grow from, as like in the true Bauhaus fashion that he was trained in, like this is our starting point, what else can we do? And radical thoughts. And Audrey Handler, early studio glass artist, one of the few women artists in that early studio glass time, who was my first studio visit as an adult. Which is pretty cool. And she has always danced in center periphery in such a nice way. Okay, so those are the people that I'm bringing with me as I do this and so many other folks. And last time I gave this talk, I listened back, and if you want to hear that version, it's not the worst thing, it's pretty good. And you can watch it online, if you want to. I realized that the whole time I was like a coiled spring, just wanting to tell you about the thing that I'm doing now. So instead, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the thing that I'm doing now, so I hopefully work that energy through a little bit, and then we're going to come back to it in the end. So, some of you folks have been wondering what I've been up to since I left the Corning Museum, and the thing that I've been up to is the pipe show of my dreams. It really is the pipe show of my dreams. I've been dreaming about doing this show for 25 years. I've been dreaming about doing this show for the entire time that I have been in glass, and I'll tell you a little bit about why or how I have to think about that. But I am delighted to tell you, be able to say now, that it is happening. It is coming to a museum. A museum in the Midwest, opening August 2026, with the first book to put pipes in a broader historical context. And I am so honored and so thrilled to get to be part of shepherding this thing that is not new, that's been here the whole time, and bring it into the light a little bit more. And towards the end of this, I'm going to talk about how I approach this work, how I approach this periphery and center and rebalancing. And I am delighted that so many of you guys are here today. Thank you. Okay, all right, perspectives. So a little bit about me, a little bit more about me. It's dangerous to give me a microphone. Like I said, I've been thinking about this. I call myself a glassy thinker. Even though I'm not a glass worker anymore, or glass maker, I'm a glassy thinker. I think through the material of glass. And I think through the material of glass because I have been in relationship to that material since I was like 18, or even earlier. And I almost never show pictures of myself in the, ever. But, now that I'm like older, I'm like, look, you guys, that's what I looked like 25 years ago. I was a baby flame worker. That's me in a class by Dinah Hewlett. And one part of what I have to say today is about the kind of research, the kinds of things that artists can know, because they're so close to the material. The kinds of things that artists can know that scholars and researchers that are outside of that space can't know. So this is like a gift that is there for all of you. There are so many different gifts. You don't have to take the same one. But one of the things that's incredible about Dinah is that she is a murrine maker, and that is a murrine collage. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what she does. But flame working is kind of a thing, and murrine is kind of a thing. And murrine is, for me, like a perfect example of this center and periphery thing. Because when you just see the outside of a cane, you can look at that cane and be like, I know what's happening in there. It's just like black and a little bit of red, it's like clear in the end, whatever. It's nothing. But when you open yourself, that's what it's like to say that's what's happening over there and not go see it. Oh, I don't need to see that, I can tell. But the thing is that when you cut the cane open, you realize that there's whole other worlds. There's whole other worlds that you can see. And the other thing that I think is kind of incredible, the other way that I glassy think through murrine making at this stage in my life, is that when I'm making cane, if I were to go back and make cane, not when Matthew Grote is really good, but when I'm making cane, you're working in 3 dimensions, you're working on a thing that you have to have so much faith that it's going to be there in the end. You don't actually know what it's going to be until you get there. You just have to keep going and take what you know and believe that it's there. And that is so much about what the creative practice is overall. Like when you're pursuing something in the studio, You just have to believe, trust your instincts and where you've been, and know that hopefully it will resolve. You put it in the annealer, you get it out the next day, but then it's still good, you know? And it's not different to do the kind of work that I do. You know, it's, and I am like, I'm always like second guessing and terrified and whatever. Do I know anything? Do I know how to even do this? You know, when I started on this project, and certainly starting on the pipe research, I'm really like, wait a second, I left my job at Corning to spend 8 hours a day on Instagram, scrolling through another you know what, yes, the answer is yes. And one of the things that's amazing about Dinah and her like focusing in and on this ability of artists to go back into the history of the world and the history of glass and unfold things is that we see on the left is an image of a cane made in the 1860s by Giacomo Franchini, who was the first person since antiquity really to understand how to make these kind of portrait canes. And then that knowledge died out of this particular way of making cane died out when he died out. And it wasn't until Dinah came in and started to think about how to recover that we got this kind of portrait cane thing going back, and then Lauren Stubb, and now that's everywhere. And no one has really brought the art of detailed greening to a wider, like a higher level than the pipemakers and then the pipe scene. But also, if you look at that image on the right, that's Paul Stankard. Dinah Hewlett was trying to figure this out and was experiencing all that fear that you experience when you're trying to do something that hasn't been done before. And she felt like, why am I even doing this? You know, it's the equivalent of spending 8 hours a day on Instagram. You know, is anything gonna come of this? Certainly no. You know, and Paul said, no, you can do this. You know, you can do this, and he commissioned her to make the thing, and so she did. Okay. Oh, this is what the old ones look like. Now we're moving to a different vignette. My pal Greg over here. It is so nice. I feel like Alice in Wonderland a little bit. I'm like, and you were here, and you were here, and you were here, and you were here. And I should say it. I didn't say thank you. You know, thank you to all of you for investing your time and your brains and your energy in being here. I really, you know, feel that. And thank you to all the organizers of the conference. But Greg, who I'm so lucky used to work for me, and who, as I told him before, not the dullest tool in the shed. He asked me what this talk was about, and I was like, oh, you know, this thing, I was like, it's just kind of like Storytime with Susie. And he's like, oh, you should have just said that's what it is, you know? So here's a little Storytime with Susie moment. This is about reorienting myself and about my centers and periphery. So when I worked at Corning, I got to go to Venice. I'd never been to Venice before. I got to go a number of times. And a thing happened for me in Venice that broke my brain for a little while, and it's this. We watched one of the best glass workers, seriously, an incredible glass blower. Many of you that know me know that I feel like I'm close to my lifetime limit of watching people work glass. But we went to this demo, and even for those jaded eyeballs, I was like, whoa, this is an incredible thing to see, right? And it was really cool. It's not really exactly my kind of thing, but I believe, you know, it's so nice to see people that are really good at what they do their thing. And then afterwards, as you do, you go up into the gift shop, and I was like thinking about getting some cups. And I was there happened to be there with a conservator from the Louvre. And I was looking at the cups, and she was like, oh, you know, those cups are crizzling. The glass is, you know, coming apart. And I was like, oh, I thought they were just dirty. She was like, no, they're coming apart. And I was like, up there, and I was like, whoa. Here we are in the height of glass land, you know? The height of glass land. One of the most talented glassworkers I have ever seen. And the glass is coming apart the same week the glass is made. What is happening? And I thought to myself, wait a second. Have I just been, like, living a lie this whole time? We think Venice is the center? We think they know everything about glass, but they don't even know how to make a good glass chemistry? What? You know, seriously, I had to go through this whole thing. And then I thought to myself, and I talked to some other people, you know, some people that collect like old Venetian stuff, and they were like, you know, we like it like that. We don't like that like super clear glass that you guys make, you know? We like the glass with a little cloud in it, like it's a living thing. And when you look at the old Venetian work, so this is Storytime with Susie. I sweated this PowerPoint, but it's just Storytime with Susie is better. When you look at the old Venetian work, the stuff that remains, that work has so much life in it. The handles aren't perfect. There's all this light. And when we look back at that work and try and make it, especially American glass workers, we make Venetian glass like this. We're like, look at how good we are at glass blowing. And the Venetians were like this. They're like, do you feel the glass? Do you feel that we are feeling the glass, that we're having this relationship with it, that we're making something extraordinary happen? And realizing that, I thought to myself, wait a second, it isn't that big. The story that I told myself, true or not, it isn't that the Venetians are just like terrible glass makers, I mean, it could be, but it's that their values, that what we consider to be good glass is culturally embedded, right? So we, especially if you go there from Corning, New York, but to live as we live in a world that is informed in large part by what makes Corning glass good. And I love Corning glass. I love my phone too much. I love that that's not prism, that I can see right through it. I love it. But I realized that idea that what is good glass is perfectly clear, doesn't change over time, is scratch resistant, is a cultural value that we receive as Americans in particular, coming from a glass legacy that even though we've had 50 years or more of the studio glass movement, is an industry-informed value. Does that make sense? It's industry-informed. And I realized also, we're just going to blow through like lots. We're going to have flyover territory in this talk. It's going to be fun because I have more to say. I realized that when I was in undergrad, I went to University of Wisconsin. I studied with a guy named Steve Barron, who most people don't know. And that's okay. Because Steve Barron wasn't really it was like going to school at University of Wisconsin when Harvey Littleton was there and then nobody knew how to blow glass. It was like, here's the blow pipes, here's the glass, you guys figure it out. Turns out that's not a good way for me to learn. But the thing that but Steve Barron was interested in us as thinkers and as artists, and one of the things that he said that I just hang with, because I was like, man, I cannot blow thin. I can't blow thin glass, and thin glass is good glass, and I can't make good glass, that sucks. And he was like, no, the idea that thin is good is culturally embedded. And I was like, really? Because I have thick somewhere. I do, I love the thin ones, I look at them, but the ones that I use are thicker, right? Okay, so it's culturally embedded. And the other thing that I learned thinking about that, realizing that what we think of as good is informed by every single thing around us, the world that we're stewed in, also made me think, it was the time that I was working on New Glass Now, and there's this piece by James McGagala from Liguania Glass in the Kingdom of Eswatini, which is a small country that's inside of South Africa. And they use all recycled glass. As many people in many parts of the world use all recycled glass in their hot and warm processes. And when you do that, the glass does not look like it was made. It does not look like it was made by Corning. It's not perfectly clear. It has color, it has tints, and it's easy. Yeah, but I had to almost physically unpeel the lenses of my eyes, to be like, this is good work, But those processes, going through all of that, really changed things for me. In terms of how I think about things, the idea that there is not one center. I mean, we know this. If we really think about it as glass people, we know that there isn't one center. Because if we thought there was one center, that center is contemporary fine art, and we're not really part of it. The glass is a part of it, but we're not really a part of that. So we know already that there's a lot of centers. But this was an important time in my reorientation. This is the part of the talk I most want to fly over. But it's online. I most want to fly over it because lightning bolts, and didn't I just tell you a lot of really good stories and stuff? Anyway, here we go. It's about core forming. It's about core forming, and it's about orbits, and it's about the suns that we put ourselves in orbit around. And it's actually kind of like an amazing thing to give this particular talk right now here, because I feel myself in orbit with our luminous and incredibly gifted Buddha graph here. So, and I feel like it would be more fair if I did talking and then Bill did talking. I know. But it doesn't work like that in this moment, but I will say, I'm going to present my view, and the cool thing about there being like orbits, is that there can be different ones. And so afterwards, I encourage you to go talk to Bill for a good take. It's fine with me. Wherever you come down on things is fine with me, I come down in a different place. Okay, these cool vessels, you've seen them? You've seen them, little vessels? They're great. And the thing is, Phil's handled more of them than I have. Let's be honest, okay? There's a story, they're interesting to me because they're one of the first glass vessels that were ever made. And so they're interesting, how did people make these glass things? How did early glassworking start? And how do we understand, as people that are informed by the tools of the moment that are culturally embedded in all the ways that I just told you, how do we look at the past and understand it? And my contention is that we generally look at the past with the tools of the present. That it's almost impossible to peel the eyeballs and see things in a different way. Also, I have to tell you one other life fear before we really get in there. It's this one. Yesterday I went to a really great talk on the life of glass. And in that talk, Anna Riley was sitting right up there in the front, gave just a beautiful paper. It's so good, where she's looking at some of the similar things, not core forming by itself, but also some of the same territory. And let me tell you, I guarantee you 25% authenticity, in what I'm going to tell you now. If you watch the one online, it'll be 30% because I was really reading the things closer. But if you look at Anna Riley's work, it's much higher, much higher percent authenticity. So I would like to just direct some energy in Anna Riley's way. Okay, all right, core forming entry. How do people make it? In the beginning, when these vessels, when there was discovery of some glass working place, Petrie, who was writing in the late 1800s, early 1900s, not this guy, a different guy, was imagining how the core form vessels, we'll look at core forming, how the core form vessels were made. And he knew a little bit about glass blowing, so he was like, these things were they were made with glass blowing. And then forever, they're looking for a furnace, they're looking for a furnace that they didn't find. And, but he had a loud voice, and people were thinking about, what he had to say. People that didn't know anything about glass blowing or glass working were like, this is how it's done, because, maybe he'd seen somebody blow some glass. And then there's a guy, Frederick Schuler, who in 1962 imagines a number of different ways for how the core form vessels could be made, including a way where he's like, it could be powdered glass. Come on in. You can sit in the front. You can move chairs over. I'm delighted that you're here. Yes. Yeah. And I didn't talk about the Grateful Dead yet, so you're here just in time. But I will, somewhere in there. Okay, so he's like, here are all these different ways, but nobody really follows it, because also right around then, a fellow named Dominic Lubino, totally important in the history of studio glass, a glass chemist that also did glassworking and really made things safe for us. He was like, the way these core form vessels were made was that glass got heated on the end of the rod and was trailed around, and that's how you did it. And Bill and I can agree on this one. We don't think this is how it's done. See, we're together. We're together so far. But this story got big. And when Bob Brill, which is what Anna Riley, who is a big part of Anna Riley's research, who was the scientist at Corning, when he started looking into this, he published this article in National Geographic where he's also talking about the cores is wrapped around the core, and that's how it happened. And look at how hot that glass is. Look at how hot that glass is there. He's like, they got these ingots of glass, they melted in. And for me, so not just for me, for other folks, they're thinking, anyway, this idea that there's very hot glass, you guys, I'm stumbling because I'm shy. There's the idea that there's very hot glass got embedded into all of the consciousness, and then our friend Bill published some things where he updated it into dipped things. And again, Bill has handled more of these pieces than I have handled. You know, so he published this idea that the glass was made on wood pipe and dipped into hot glass, and I haven't had this conversation with Bill except for like 14 seconds before this, so it's not very nice, you know. So I can't give you an accurate representation of his thinking behind this, but we all know that Bill is like wildly talented and also a gifted researcher. This idea, though, that I don't think it happened this way. I don't think it happened this way because at the time I'll tell you why, and obviously I'm not a teaching glass topic, right? The reason that I think it didn't happen this way is because glass was so precious at that time. They were melting big ingots of things, but to get it hot again, you know, is really hard. And the idea that you're going to get the glass so hot and then put your core, which is like made of dung, so you're going to put poop in your hot glass, you know, that you know for a long time that you like breathe it out, you know, as you're letting, like it just doesn't like ring true to me that that's like what you're going to do, you know. But it could have been, you know, it could have been. Anyway, you know, Bill made this video, and because of the ways that museums work, you know, because of the ways that like our institutions, our sons work, that video then shows up as like, it shows up all over the place. You know, one of the things that happens when you are in the center is that your research, instead of being like, it's this idea that you had, it becomes the word, you know? And when challenge. What? It's no longer challenged. Yeah, because she said it's no longer challenged. Also, I do love the audience participation, so this is good. No, I do. I'm glad you did that. Because exactly that. Because we live also in a culture where when things are the word, we are challenged to accept them as such. We are not all, some of us are, and then some of us get in trouble, encouraged to question the word, but we're not all, you know, so that gets in the way. But there were some people, some artists, who had this idea, who worked close, artists and experimental archaeologists like who also worked very close to the material, closer than Schuler and some of the other guys. And they were like, you know, I think there was a different way that these were made. And also this guy Schuler, actually, he wrote long ago that like maybe it was kind of like they used crumpled up glass like this to take there, and somebody should figure that out. And it turned out that somebody was thinking about that, and that was our pal Dudley Giberson, who also taught Paul and had the revelations that were about to unfold after teaching a class with Paul Stankard, where he was like, dreamy, essence, you know, ideas. That's what I'm trying to give you. And Dudley was like, serious, glass flowing, etc. But he came back and he changed his mind. Dudley was an early studio glass maker who became a bead maker and became a equipment guy, really understanding how furnaces were made, and got really interested in ancient techniques. And he was thinking about how core forming worked, and how actually ancient furnaces worked, and like how anybody in the ancient days was able to make glass. And he had this dream. Oh, I gotta hurry up. He had this dream. I have this note here to tell you about the dream. He came back after this class with Paul, and he had this dream about a beehive-shaped furnace. A beehive-shaped furnace that you could, you know, kindle whatever your fire was. It would be small, and it would concentrate the flame, and it would come out the top, and guess what? Then it's a torch. Exactly. Then it's a torch. And he built this thing that he dreamed of. Actually, then he was doing some reading, and he read in this book that came out, it came out in 1970, about these contemporaneous bead furnaces in Nigeria that are this beehive-shaped furnace. And he was like, oh, cool, so this is a thing, like this can work. And then he built it, and then he worked on things. But it took him a long time to get there. He'd been like thinking about this for a long time. It took him a long time to get here. As he writes, when I began the journey, I did not suspect that the very current views as proposed by Dominic Labino in 1966, and by such notables as Robert Brill and others, including the prestigious Corning Museum, would be the very blinders that kept new insight from view. You know, he took him years to get over that idea, you know, to have that dream. And what he was responding to, and again, talking to Bill, who's handled work after for the other side. What he was responding to is that there's no transparency in the glass. It's like these little bubbly sort of things. And you're like, this is not made by dipping. The glass would be better if it's hot enough to go all the way around the core. And he came up with an idea that you do most of it cold. That you build your core on a mandrel, that you get it wet, that you tap in a bunch of powdered glass onto it, that you tamp it down, that you cool it for a long time, and then you fire it in your cool torch furnace. And then you can also use that same torch furnace to make your painting, and to do your wrap and ring, and to add your handles. And I am totally compelled by this. I'm totally compelled by this also because this is somebody that is like in the studio all the time, trying these things out and trying to do it in a, like trying to understand, you know, how it's done. There's an incredible video about this. It's at the Ray now, but it's also online, and you guys can find it, and you should watch it because it's cool. Also, it's from the early 90s, and that makes it great.
Vintage.
Yes, it's vintage. Yeah, so he made it happen. And his ideas get picked up again by Keith Cumming and E. Marianne Stern that I told you about before, but it doesn't make the kind of mainstream cut that much. Because he's not an archaeologist, he's not a curator, he's not, you know, he's got this outside knowledge. And that's the thing that I am thinking about. You know, how do you bring in, this is what I'm thinking about. What I'm thinking about is, everybody got it in their head that these core-form vessels were made by glass blowing, because glass blowing was the most dominant form of glass working that everybody was thinking about. And because it's repeated all over the internet. And we all know what it's like to have something repeated all over the internet and make it seem like it really is the only thing. And it becomes a block for our ability to see and think in new ways. Actually, I think about that like AI. When I had AI write something for me, I'm like, damn, that sounds good. And then I look at it for a little bit and I'm like, wait, it doesn't say anything at all. And then I'm like, wait, I know I had something to say, and now I can't even figure out what it is, and I gotta like really go through a whole process to understand what the ChatGPT was thinking, you know, and then listen to myself. I mean, when a thing is everywhere, when it's ubiquitous, it's almost impossible to think any other way. The same way having glass blowing makes it almost impossible to think about, like reorienting us around any kind of different sun. So it is almost impossible. Like when we define the past through the tools of the present, you know, it's a mental block. Trying to understand a technique at the margins of the known using only the most common tools of the present is likely to fail. And this is as much true about, let's see what I have going on here. This is as much true about the past as it is about the future. Like if we only think about building the future with the tools of the present, we won't get anywhere. We need to think about what tools we can build and imagine and start from zero and do the next thing so that we can get to somewhere else that we haven't been yet. I mean, that's the magic. You know, that's the real thing. If we can figure out how to undo how we were thinking, to think about how we can think in the future, I mean, then won't we be somewhere, right? That's what I'm really kind of cluing into. Thank you for going on this history dive with me. We're getting to the other stuff soon, I promise you. But here's another thing. Here's another thing about what we know and what we don't know. We're thinking about these Nigerian glassworkers documented in 1970 making these things. Well, there's new research. It's not that new now. It's several years back, but it's good. from Dr. Abidemi Babalola about primary glassworking. So that's like making glass from raw materials in Nigeria so long before European contact. So long. So if you have like a little bit of sense of glass history, and if you don't, that's fine. Oh, you know what, you guys? I didn't tell you this one either. Do you know how I became the lecturer that I am? Hopefully that you're not asleep, even though you might have been up really late last night. It's a gas conference and you might have or whatever. It's because I taught at the Rhode Island School of Design for 4 years, history of glass, and my class was 9 a.m. on Friday mornings. This is my slot. And I really had to bring it, you know? I really had to bring it. So hopefully we're getting there. Glassworking, since almost the beginning of glassworking, what we know so far is that it was developed in one place and then brought other places through contact, through trade, through different things. But this Nigerian glassworking, which nobody was looking at with the right kind of lens, is the only place that I'm aware of, and listen, I guarantee you not 100% accuracy, but this is the only place that I am aware of in this moment, where there's evidence of primary glassworking before it was wrought by someone else. And that is so cool. Yes? C, common era. 1,000. Common era. No. I don't use AD because I don't orient around that particular sun. But it's okay. But common era, this time, right now, 1,000. 1,000 years ago. Here you go. Actually, look, I have a graphic for that. Thank you, plant in the audience in the back. This is too much information on here and I can't even see it. We got the data of last time. We got the core forming in the first time. We got core forming later. All these different things, whatever. Nigerian glassmaking, right there. And the Frankie that I showed you in the beginning, sort of close to the end. All right. This is cool research. Abidemi Babalola's research is so good. You should look it up. You should look it up because the meaning of glass takes on a different valence. Like, what Nigerian glassworking was mostly about was bead making, because secretly, you guys, beads are the thing. Beads are the most important single glass object I can think of in the biggest part of the world for the longest amount of time for the most people. And beads in Nigeria are wildly important because beads are connected to spiritual practices, the Yoruba spiritual practices that had predated glassworking, but then the glass became the thing. The glass became the thing, and the colors that were able to be made in glass became such the thing that they are what is associated with the different orishas, the different god figures in Yoruba culture. And that is like big. And just in case, where's my plant that's going to ask about how far away Nigeria is from Egypt? Like, did they just get it from there?
How far away is Nigeria from Egypt?
Thank you, young sir in the front row. It's really freaking far. It's really far. Just in case you were like, no, whatever, they got it from Egypt. It's 4,000 miles driving from Cairo to Lagos. 2,400 miles as the crow flies. You know, that is like nearly in New York City to San Francisco. It's really far. It's pretty amazing. Okay, we're almost getting there. I know, it's 10:50, fine. I do have pipes to talk about, but here are some takeaways from this moment. 1, the world is full of things that we don't know yet. And it is a fallacy to think that we live in a world where we know everything. The world is open. And the world is open to every single one of you to discover the new things also, and hopefully for me. 2, know who your sons are, and know what their motivations are, and know where they're coming from. And also, if you are the son, I think this is an important one for me. Like if you are, not that I'm a son, but leave frayed edges. You know, I think if you leave frayed edges, you have less chance of becoming the word. You know, if you show that you don't know, then you have something else to go. And then, artists plus research equals magic. So this is also a shameless plug for Bandu's talk later this afternoon in this same room, 4:30 to 5:30, because this book is really good. Like this is also shameless plug because I got to write the introduction to the new edition. But it also meant that I reread that book and read the updated one that I had those books. I remember getting those books as a baby landworker all those years ago and being like, whoa, this is cool, but I also wasn't oriented to probably reading the historical things in quite the same way as I am now. And I reread it and I was like, I can't find a comprehensive history of lampworking anywhere else that's anywhere as good. So thank you. Thank you. So we're almost done. I'll try not to go over, although we did start late, you guys. So much talking. Centers, not just me, centers. If we're thinking about, now we're talking about pipes. I'm not going to show you a lot of pipes. This is a work in progress. I'm wetting your whistle. I'm wetting your whistle so that you are ready in August 2026. But if we think about what was happening in studio glass in the mid-90s, which is the kind of birth moment of the glass pipe scene, we're thinking about this. These are just some names that I threw in there, but these are, this is names. It's like a glass blowing time, a Sofa Chicago time, Billy Morris was ascendant, Dale, glass was having a major, it was everywhere in museum shows. It was really cool. The studio at the Corning Museum of Glass was founded right around then. It's amazing. It's actually because all of that stuff was happening that I knew about studio glass. I was lucky to grow up just outside of Chicago, and I started going to Sofa Chicago almost in 1995 and getting to see those things, which is pretty cool. But this is what's happened. This is what, and the thing is, when I was making this, I was an all night long. I started giving this talk at 2 a.m., just in case you were wondering. I've been giving this talk for many hours by now. I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So when I was putting this together, I was thinking about the peripheries. The peripheries, they weren't the peripheries then. All I've done, this is the secret. The only thing I've done in my career, there's really nothing innovative in what I've done in my career. The only thing that I've done in my career is just kind of scoop up what was on the edges when I started. That's all. That's all that I've done is be attentive to what was happening there and be interested and curious and see the opportunity and try to bring that in. But this is what's happening there. And here is what was happening in pipes in just before 1995. It started in the Grateful Dead scene. It started in the parking lots. I'm showing you this image because it's the image that I have and that I use. But I'm showing you this image because this is sort of like if I had an image of Sofa Chicago with all the people in there and all the little booths, maybe it feels the same. But this is unstructured, self-generated, messy, organic, underground, undercover. And the story usually starts with Bob Snodgrass, who's the Johnny Appleseed of the pipe scene, selling his wares in this way, a direct, this kind of direct way. And when Jerry Garcia died in 1995, the pipe scene went as a cartoon for the upcoming publication says. The pipe scene and all Grateful Dead things did the only sensible thing and go on fish tour. Which is also decentralized. The way that the artists were making the work, the way that the information was getting spread about pipes was a peer-to-peer network. It was building a world. It was building a world and bringing the things. And the way that I learned about pipes was through that. Because exactly where I was in that moment. I was in high school. I was learning about studio glass at the exact same time that all of a sudden there were pipes everywhere. So for me, there has never been a separation between these things. For me, it's always been, that's always been what glassworking is about in the United States. Always. So there's nothing innovative at all about the work that I'm doing. I'm just trying to say, look at this thing that was there. And also because, I've always been the guy that I was. If I could have given a historiography for forming at 17, maybe I would have. I was in high school seeing glass pipes and thinking to myself, oh, in my short life to this moment, there's only been 2 object types that didn't exist and that now do. And one is the Starbucks to-go cup, which didn't exist and now is in everybody's hands. And the other is the glass spoon. And just because now you know that I really have been the same guy all that time, I was like, oh, isn't that very interesting that in the background of the WTO and NAFTA, et cetera, that one of those things is handmade, and that it's important that it's handmade, and that it's handmade by people, that people really, 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 really care that it's handmade by somebody, and handmade by somebody in the US. And that's how I started to pay attention. And later, I don't know if this is what I meant to talk about, but do you need to go? Don't you need to go? Okay.
I pushed it.
Thank you. That was awesome. Keeping things for myself. Anyway, later I saw, no. Do you want to know why I think pipes are interesting, or should I just talk about pipes? Okay, later when I was in college, I was at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the house. And I was a fine arts major, and I, being the guy that I am, had a lot to say and critique, I'm like, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about how this work relates to this, and nobody had anything to say. Nobody had anything to say, and I was like, oh. But then I would go out into the world. Madison is a big place. I would go out into the world, and there were people that didn't consider themselves art people in any way. That would have the most detailed and interesting conversations about the form and decoration of pipes and the way that they contributed to function. And I was like, wow, this is an arts analysis conversation. This is an artwork that is living, that people are spending money on, that is important to them. People that are not going to ever buy any other original artwork, or if they are, aren't going to do that for 20 more years. But they need this. They need this thing. And the idea, being a craft-oriented person, the idea that there was any single thing that people were making right now that people needed is unbelievable. And it was in that time that I didn't have any idea what curator was, for 7 more years. I didn't know what material culture was for 7 more years. But that's what I was responding to. And so I have been responding to that. I've been dreaming about an exhibition of these things since then. And what I think is interesting, oh God, I want to show you the rest of these things. The pipe makers had to build it themselves. Once the Jam Man scene wasn't happening, they built glasspipes.org, which was a community of exchange, a community where they could see each other's work and they could get better, and it was meaningful. And then they went to Instagram, some of the first folks to use Instagram as a platform for art sales, and the artists have been the owners of that market, the builders of that market, the whole time. And you guys, that's amazing. That's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing for so many reasons. Oh gosh. Can I keep going a little bit? Okay, all right. Okay. It's an amazing thing for so many reasons. I think I was going to say this a little bit later, but let me say it now. We are all sitting here, most of us in this audience, I consider myself part of the audience, let's do it together. We're not here at the beginning of the Glass Art Society. We did not have to build this field. We roll in and rearrange the chairs and feel good about that, but we didn't have to build it. We are inheritors. We are so lucky to inherit a thing that has been built. And where many of the challenges that face, there are challenges. I know some of them, and I believe that there are so many more, but we didn't have to solve all of those challenges for ourselves. They were solved already. But the pipe makers had to build. They built what they had. It's astounding. It's astounding, and it's also an example for all of us. Like, we got Max Hand in the house. He's a builder. He's having TV. He built the show that's opening tonight. I'll show you the flyer later, but you should go. So I'm not showing you many pipes. I mean, I showed you this one. I'm not showing you many pipes in person, but if you want to see some, you can see some at Parlay later. But they didn't just build it. You know, at first the pipe makers were looking for some validation from the mainstream. There were pipes shown at the 2003 gas conference, and there was, Nate Purcell, who was really trying to gain mainstream acceptance. And the work, this is kind of what I have to say about marginalization. When you marginalize any folks, and they're trying to find a way to get to the center, they're going to look at what's happening in the center, and they're going to try and emulate that. And what they're emulating might not be the thing that you want them to emulate, but this is work that was award-winning. And let me give you a sense of why, Nate was making this work, because this is what Billy Morris was making right then. And this is what Billy Morris was making right then. And this is what Billy Morris was making right then. This is the work that was like the hottest shit in glass. This is it. And I think our sensibilities have mostly changed. But you can't blame anyone for wanting to get to the center and trying to use the tools that they see are succeeding there. And I actually love this piece by Nate. I love it. It looks exactly like one of Billy's suspended artifacts, but it's tiny, with a functional pipe. I love it. But then Nate, a couple things happened for Nate. One, he realized, he won the Nation Award. He had worked in the Kilchuck auction. He went to SoFa. He brought pipes to SoFa. He sold pipes at SoFa, like his own gallery and at Top Gallery. But he saw that the mainstream wasn't coming over. And somebody gave him the news, that this was like appropriated work and didn't land all the right way. And he thought, enough with using the tools of the past, He was like, let me think about the tools of the future. And equally hard suicide bomber from the Eco Bomber series. But he then went and built things. He published the first books that there are on pipe making, and he started a gallery that was the first, that set the bar for gallery exhibitions of pipe making for a long time, because they had to build it themselves, create their own center. And then, also, Lacey, they developed a sense of what the Snodgrass family calls co-opetition. That they're all these cooperative or Degenerate Flame Off, the Pipe Classic, other places where pipe makers could compete against each other, where the scene could build itself, could develop what was valued amongst its own self and bring itself up. And also on the right, you see Lace and Salt. You can see the two of them demoing later today. And Daniel Coyle tomorrow. So check it all out. So the thing is, it's there. You just have to know to look for it. And what I think about, I am almost done. I'm sorry to go over. What I think about what the pipe makers did is this.
It don't cost nothing to validate your partners. This is how we did it. The mainstream would not validate us. They said we was nothing. So we told each other we were something. We said, yo, you hot.
It ends abruptly, but that's the thesis. I was looking in this book, I've been really trying to get somebody to write about the connections between pipe making and graffiti and skateboarding and other subcultures. And I've been having some challenges, but KRS-One, as he often does, just has the answer. Also, this talk is so good. It's the Canadian Music Awards from 2008. You should just watch it. I want you to say, this is all I've got, you guys. Storytime with Susie, this is everything. Every single thing that happens in that talk is the right thing. I can just press play and pretend that I'm KRS-One and we're really talking about ego. But that's the thing, if the mainstream isn't paying attention, if what's there isn't the thing that you want, then you need to build it, and that's pretty incredible. Okay, I'm gonna be done, because, But what I was going to say is, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you listen from the edges? How do you bring what's on the outside to the inside? And I think thinking through all of this is Bell Hooks, who's a feminist theorist. So what she says, you can read her great books, or you can look at this explainer that's helpful. Is that a lot of times the center, and we see this all over the place. This is the struggle. A lot of times the center feels like, how do we, the edge needs to be more like us. The edge, like those guys if they could just be like us, you know? But that's not the thing. What Bell Hooks says is that you gotta move from the center to the margin. You gotta find some place in between. You gotta build some bridges of understanding so that everybody can go there. So the thing that I have been trying to do, the thing that I am lucky to feel like hopefully might be working, or this is how I'm trying. The approach that I'm taking is that what I want for this exhibition is it not to just be a bunch of pipes, like a bunch of pipes made like last year, here they are in a museum, now they're in a museum. We have validated them. No, what I want is that it isn't just the objects, it's the people, it's the culture, it's the approach. So the thing that I am trying to do as I'm building it is to talk and learn and hear as much as possible and bring those voices into what I do. Because you know the thing is, whatever good thing that I can do is not because I have it. No, whatever good thing that I can do is because I'm lucky to have the voices of other people, and then I bring that into my mix, and then hopefully what I create has all of those voices in it, and it is resonant. It is resonant for all of the people that I work with, and then it is also resonant for the people that don't have any kind of direct relationship with it. And it's that listening from the edges. You know, what isn't there? How can we hear this? How can we humble ourselves to something else, to not think that we have all of the answers, but to open ourselves up into something else that lets us do it. And so with that, this is the show you should go see tonight. After this release and salt. And then mark your calendars. It's actually August 30th in a Midwestern museum near you. The end.